Groovy Fox here, and today we're asking ourselves the question, what would happen if a child with special powers came to this earth, was raised here amongst us human beings, and grew up not to be the savior of our race, but rather the destroyer of our entire planet? That's right, we're talking about Brightburn, the 2019 film, directed by David Yarovesky and starring Elizabeth Banks, David Denman, and Jackson A. Dunn as their son, Brendan Breyer. Now, the overall plot of this film is pretty much Superman mythos viewed through the lens of a horror film. Now, instead of someone that was good-natured like Clark Kent or Kal-El coming to this planet, which we end up getting instead is a conqueror, a destroyer, someone like a General Zod. Another idea that was floating around in the back of my head as I watched this film kind of thought of this character almost like a Saiyan. They sent the young child to a planet to grow up there, get ready to destroy the planet, or at the very least, get the planet subdued so it could be conquered very easily at a future point. Overall, I really enjoyed this film. There are some great performances by Jackson A. Dunn and all the main characters, David Denman, and definitely Elizabeth Banks. Elizabeth Banks, I really felt for as a character in this film because she portrayed this very loving mother figure. But over the course of the film, you could tell that she knew that there was something wrong with her child, but she just didn't want to admit it. Because as we all know, if you admit it, then you have to confront it, and you have to say that there's definitely something wrong. And she doesn't want to give up what she has. She loves this child. You can tell from the very beginning of the film. She's his one true connection to humanity. And it's definitely made apparent, and it gets tested by the events that transpire. One night, a couple is in their house, on their farm, getting ready to do some baby making action, getting ready to get down. And they hear a noise. They hear something crash land out in the woods. They go out and they find a child out there in the middle of the woods in some sort of spacecraft. They decide to take it home and raise it as their own, very much like Superman. Difference is, as we fast forward, we see the child grow up to about an age of 12 years, 12, 13 years. And then one night, he's laying there in bed and he hears this ship out in the barn calling to him. He almost has a bit of like a seizure. And at that point, it kind of lets you know in the film that there's some sort of external force which is awakening kind of like a programming in this child, and it's calling it ship, calling it to its true nature. You don't get to see a lot of Brendan before any of this transpires, which I think ended up doing the film a little bit more harm. Because once things start to move, they move pretty quickly. There's two aspects to this character. One part of him wants to be a normal child, but another part of him is being overwhelmed by his true nature. Something that he has no control of, something that he's not even aware of. Then in another scene while Kyle is at work, Tori finds Brendan out at the barn, ripping into the storage door where they keep the spaceship. And as she calls to him, when he snaps out of it and falls down into the ship, stumbles kind of onto his origins, he actually ends up cutting himself a little bit. And Tori goes down and she sees this. So he's never been hurt in his life. Never been sick. He's never had a broken bone. He's unbreakable. He's unbreakable. That sets up his kryptonite for the end of the film. The big climax, as it were. Things start to get a little bit interesting as they go out on a camping trip. While they're hunting, Brendan and his father Kyle have a talk about natural instincts and the birds and the bees, if you know what I'm saying. You know, and he lets him know that, yeah, these are things that are going to happen, and it's okay. You don't have to be afraid of them. You know, it's just natural. It's just part of who you are. So that night, while his parents, Tori and Kyle, are asleep, Brendan decides to fly off and go visit this girl that he has a bit of a crush on. And it seems like they have a real connection, and she actually does really like him because he doesn't know how to handle himself being a young man at the same time as being this alien predator. He frightens the shit out of her. You know, he's trying to be sweet, but he just appears in the middle of her room at night and scares the shit out of her. She calls for her mother, and then her mother sees Brendan standing out in the yard. Then they both recognize who he is. Then the next day when they're doing a trust exercise, Brendan gets pushed towards the girl that he just frightened, and because she's scared of him at this point, she lets him fall to the ground. And when she goes to help him back up, he gets angry at her because he already senses that first twinge of rejection from humanity. And then he actually ends up crushing her hand. And that leads to further issues because at that point, they call the parents in. And then the mother lets everyone know that she knows what was happening, that she knows that Brendan was in her daughter's room the night before. Even though they were on a camping trip, there was no way that he could have been 30 miles away and then back in the morning. It's just not possible. this point, the parents are still in denial about exactly what Brandon is. At this point, the girl's mother has an idea that there's definitely something up with Brendan. And Brendan, being a child at heart, realizes, what's the best way to fix this situation? Let's get rid of the mother. Which leads us to the scene from the trailer where he attacks her in the diner at night, and then corners her in the cold freezer and uses his eye lasers to cut the fucking door down, charge at her with his super speed, and she's out for the count. She's done. You're not going to see her for the rest of the film, for better or worse. And then things just start to spiral because now he realizes he can more or less do whatever he wants. Now at this point, things start to escalate a little bit more. Brendan starts to give in more and more to his desires and his instincts. Becomes more drawn to whatever it is that's locked inside of the barn that his parents are keeping from him, which is origin, the answer to what he really is and where he came from. Things start to go sideways for him for school because he hurt the girl. He has to go into the counseling and stuff like that, and the counselor says that she has to respond to the sheriff, has to talk to him because he likes what's going on. He thinks that he's better than everybody else. He views kinds of people almost like insects, like he's something superior. She lets him know that unless he has positive progress, she's going to have to tell the sheriff because there was a violent act that was involved with him and the girl. Now she's his aunt. She's his mother's sister. So Brendan shows up at her house in the middle of the night to try to intimidate her. And she lets him know, sorry Brendan, sometimes you can't go easy on friends and family. You have to do what you have to do. Which is probably not the best lesson to teach this child. Because he pretty much murders her husband on the way back home. Because when her husband gets home, Brendan is in the house. He sees Brendan hiding in the closet wearing his red mask. He just yanks it off of him and tries to drive him home. But Brendan disappears. He can't control Brendan. So he gets in the truck and tries to ride off and tell the parents what was going on. Not sure why he didn't use his phone to make sure his wife was okay or just call the parents of the child. He gets in his truck and he tries to drive over to their house so we can confront them about what Brendan's been doing. And Brendan intercepts him and makes him crash his truck. Then in this awesome car accident scene, he ends up ripping his lower jaw off and they show it and it's horrific. And then Brendan just stands there and just watches him bleed. And then he does his little BB mark in the man's blood, and it just becomes his calling card at that point, and what links all of his crimes together. Now later that night, Brendan comes home, and they've been looking for him. They're not sure where he is. So when the next day, when Kyle, the father, finds out that his friend was in the hospital and died from his injuries, he puts two and two together and finds out that Brendan was out there. He finds the clothes that he was hiding from the night before, and sees that there's blood on them. He tries to show his wife, Tori, but she still doesn't believe it. She's still in denial about everything. She wants to believe that there's good in her son and that she can help him. She wants him to be her baby still, which, you know, it's definitely commendable. And Elizabeth Banks is totally believable in this role once again. I thought she wasn't really going to be able to play off being the mom so well, but she totally does. She seems like a really nurturing, caring person. Someone that doesn't want to believe the worst about their child, which I believe pretty much all parents kind of do up to a certain point, unless they're total assholes. Which ends up leading to a little bit of a fight between Brendan and Kyle. They decide to go out on a hunting trip, and then Kyle tries to straight up shoot Brendan, like in the back of the head while they're out. And it's at this point where there's the final turn for the film, where Brendan just lets go and just grabs his father and just eye lasers him right through the head. And the camera doesn't cut away either, man. You just see Brendan burn a hole right through the back of his fucking head, like in graphic detail. Like no cutaways, no zooms in on the face as you hear the screaming. Like they just show his fucking head just melt. It's fucking badass. Then when Tori ends up calling him, she's like, "Where's Dad?" And he's like, "Dad's gone, sorry." So at this point, she knows that shit's getting real. The sheriff has already stopped by and asked her if she's noticed the B&B symbol. And he wants to take a look around the house. She knows that Brendan's been drawing in his notebook, and she's seen glimpses of whatever he's been drawing, which shows his little costume, shows his B&B symbol, his calling card. So at this point, she realizes that, yeah, he's gone to completely over the edge and everybody's right. She calls the police when Brendan comes back to the house to attack her. Now at this point, Brendan's killed these police officers, and he's stalking through the house trying to find his mother, so she races towards the barn to try to get a piece of the spaceship to defend herself with. He goes out there and he confronts her, and she calls to him. She calls him, lets her know that you'll always be my baby. You'll always be my baby. He goes to her, and she tries to stab him in the back. Moms, am I right? He's lost all grip on his humanity. He totally just lets go of it. He grabs her and flies her straight up a mile high or two up into the air. And then you think that maybe they're going to go back down together. What's he going to do? And in a very symbolic way, he just lets her go. Just poop. Watch her falling in slow motion and just fall and fall and fall. Hopefully she aimed for the bushes. And that's when you know that he's totally let go of all humanity that was left inside of him. He's killed his entire family at this point. He's killed multiple police officers and innocent people that were just trying to stop him. Just trying to help the people that he wanted to hurt. It was an excellent origin story for an evil Superman, or really any kind of supervillain. It was pretty cool. I really liked it. Now, overall, I thought this was a really good movie. I would definitely watch it again. I would recommend, if you're a fan of Man of Steel, which they're out there, let's be honest, that you go check this out, because it was very similar to Man of Steel, but with an evil horror kind of vibe to it. You can definitely tell that David Yarovesky has some horror roots to him, because the horror elements of this film I thought were really, really strong. I was surprised by some of the gore in this film. Some of my critiques of the film, I wish that I would have seen a little bit more of Brendan being a regular child before we moved pretty quickly into the evil aspects of him materializing or manifesting themselves. I thought that would have given a little bit more depth to his role. But I thought Jackson A. Dunn did really well with the role. As a younger actor, I'd definitely be more interested in seeing more of his work in the future. I think he has potential to do a lot of interesting characters if he can keep his range off at such a young age. Doesn't come off as really hokey or anything like that. I thought it was actually really, really believable. And some of it's kind of like a story about puberty and coming into adolescence. Some of it's just a film about you being overwhelmed by your natural instincts, by your true nature, you know, and that can be really, really scary in itself. Or even just looking at it from the aspects of the parents, you know, there's something in their child that they can't control. They love the child, they want the best for him, but there's something that's beyond them that they just can't ignore, that they can't do anything about. And all they can do is hold on and hope for the best. It's actually kind of terrifying when you think about it. Some of the other things that I wish I would have seen in this film, I wish I would have seen more gore. There were some good kills, and they weren't too gratuitous. But what I saw, I really, really liked. So if I would have got to see a little bit more of that, just to amp it up a little bit, that would have been great. Now, also this film was made on a smaller budget, so there were some scenes that you would think that would be in the film, but end up happening kind of off screen, like his spaceship crashing. You don't really get to see that. There's a scene towards the very end of the film where he causes a plane to crash. I would have liked to see a little bit of that. If they would have put some of those scenes in to really give it a little bit of a blockbuster shine, and I thought it would have helped add it to a little bit more. And some people say that they would have liked to have the film play out as a bit of a mystery. You know, I saw a bunch of trailers for this film. I knew it was going to be good going in. I knew I was going to like it. And I kind of already knew exactly what it was. You could tell from the very first trailer that it was kind of an evil Superman origin story. So, yeah, I really like this. If you're a fan of horror films, or just burn out on the superhero genre in general, and want to see something that's a little bit different, like the antithesis of the Marvel films in a good way, not in just an overly dark DC kind of way, I would recommend going and seeing this film. But it definitely does have some bleak overtones to it, where there isn't really any chance of redemption for any of the characters. You know, definitely not for Brendan, because he definitely totally leans into his dark desires. I hope you guys like this review. It was a little bit late getting out to you. We're in the middle of the summer movie season, so I am seeing a lot of films right now. So I am working on a lot of different projects at the same time, but it also means that there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, a lot of groovy content coming your way. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe to the channel, make sure to follow me on my other social media, and also maybe follow me over on Twitch. Check me out for some live content, playing some old school games, and playing some new releases as well. I hope you guys have a great day, stay safe, stay classy, but most of all, stay groovy, people.